Often, your mobile phone becomes unusable once on Japanese soil. The solution: public phones. In the streets, bars, hotels, shops, trains. Japanese public phones are everywhere. Unlike many other countries, Japan did not get rid of public phones with the advent of mobile phones. Easily identifiable by their green or gray color, they can be a great help in a country where your mobile phone is no longer of any use. Only gray phones are for use with international calling cards, which display the words "International Phone," will enable you to call overseas. Green phones are intended for local use only. To use the phones, insert coins or swipe a prepaid card which can be found near the phone booths, at kiosks or a conveni. Attention! Phones only take 10 or 100 yen coins. Some international cards such as Moshi World Card or KDDI Super World Card allow you to call abroad from any public phone. In Japan, public phone booths are known as koshu denwa, or public telephones. While they were once a common sight on the streets of Japan, their numbers have decreased significantly in recent years due to the widespread use of mobile phones. However, public telephones can still be found in certain areas, such as train stations, shopping centers, and other public places. They are typically operated by coins or prepaid cards, which can be purchased at convenience stores or vending machines. It's worth noting that public telephones in Japan typically only accept coins or prepaid cards issued in Japan, so if you're visiting from overseas, you may need to find alternative means of communication such as renting a mobile phone or using a data SIM card. Accessibility: public telephones in Japan are generally accessible 24/7. They are well maintained and clean, and you can find them in a variety of locations, from busy city streets to rural areas. Payment methods: as mentioned earlier, public telephones in Japan typically accept coins or prepaid cards. You can purchase prepaid cards from vending machines or convenience stores, and they come in various denominations. Some newer public phones also accept credit cards. Language: most public phones in Japan have instructions in Japanese only, so it may be difficult for non-Japanese speakers to use them. However, some phones in tourist areas have English instructions as well. Emergency calls: public telephones in Japan are equipped with a special button for emergency calls. If you press the button, you will be connected to an emergency operator who can dispatch police, fire, or medical services. Declining usage: the use of public telephones in Japan has declined significantly in recent years, due to the widespread availability of mobile phones. As a result, many public telephones have been removed from service, and it may become increasingly difficult to find them in the future. Overall, public telephones in Japan can be a convenient way to make calls if you don't have a mobile phone or if you need to make an emergency call. Just be sure to have some coins or a prepaid card handy, and keep in mind that English instructions may not always be available. Availability: while public telephones are becoming increasingly scarce in Japan, they can still be found in many places, including train stations, bus stops, convenience stores, and public buildings. However, you may need to search a bit to find one in some areas. Cost: the cost of using a public telephone in Japan can vary depending on the location and the type of call you make. Local calls are generally cheaper than long-distance or international calls. You can find the rates posted on the telephone itself, or you can ask at a nearby convenience store or information center. Maintenance: public telephones in Japan are generally well maintained and clean, and they are serviced regularly by telecom companies. However, you may occasionally come across a phone that is out of order or in need of repair. Additional services. Some public telephones in Japan offer additional services such as internet access, faxing, or printing. However, these services are less common than they used to be, as more people now use smartphones and other mobile devices for these functions. Culture. In Japan, it is considered impolite to talk loudly on a public telephone or to use foul language. Additionally, it is customary to end a call with a polite phrase such as, "Arigato gozaimashita," thank you very much, even if you are speaking with a stranger. Overall, while public telephones in Japan are becoming less common, they can still be a useful resource for travelers and residents alike. Just be sure to have the appropriate payment method and keep in mind that they may not always be easy to find. Accessibility features. Many public telephones in Japan are equipped with accessibility features for people with disabilities, such as braille instructions, TTY, text telephone, devices, and audio guidance. Some phones also have adjustable height controls for wheelchair users. Prepaid cards. If you plan on using a prepaid card to make calls from a public telephone in Japan, be aware that the cards are specific to the telephone company that operates the phone. For example, NTT East and NTT West both operate public telephones in Japan, and each company issues its own prepaid cards. International calls. If you need to make an international call from a public telephone in Japan, you will need to use an international calling card or an international operator service. These services can be accessed by dialing a special access code, which is typically provided on the phone or in a nearby information booth. Signal quality. The signal quality on public telephones in Japan is generally good, and you should be able to make clear calls without any problems. However, in more remote or mountainous areas, you may experience some dropouts or interference. Phone booth etiquette. When using a public telephone in Japan, it is considered polite to keep your voice low and to end your call quickly. If someone else is waiting to use the phone, be sure to offer to let them go ahead of you. Additionally, it is important to dispose of any trash or wrappers in a nearby garbage bin and to leave the phone in good condition for the next user. Overall, while public telephones in Japan are becoming less common, they can still be a useful resource for travelers and locals who need to make a call. By keeping these tips in mind, you can make your public telephone experience in Japan a smooth and hassle-free one. Japan looks to cut number of public payphones by 75% due to spread of mobiles. Yes, that's correct. The use of public telephones in Japan has declined significantly in recent years due to the widespread availability of mobile phones. As a result, the number of public payphones in Japan has been steadily decreasing, and the government has announced plans to reduce the number of public payphones even further. According to a report by the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications, there were approximately 160,000 public payphones in Japan in 2018, down from a peak of around 550,000 in the late 1990s. The ministry is now aiming to reduce the number of public payphones to around 40,000 by 2023, which represents a reduction of 75%. The move to reduce the number of public payphones has been met with some criticism from people who still rely on them, such as elderly residents and those who live in rural areas with poor mobile coverage. However, the government has argued that the cost of maintaining and repairing the remaining public payphones is becoming increasingly unsustainable, given the declining usage. Overall, while public payphones in Japan may become less common in the future, they will likely continue to play a role in emergency situations and for those who do not have access to a mobile phone. Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. If you found it helpful or enjoyable, please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel for more content like this in the future.